Today's video is going to be all about furnace filters. For a while now, I wanted to get an assortment of furnace filters and check the static pressure drop across each one of them, just to see how restrictive each of these air filters are. So I got them kind of in order, from fiberglass filters or to poly filters. These are, they're popular for not filtering much of anything at all, but they do let a lot of airflow through. And they're very cheap filters. I couldn't even find a pack of just one, so I had to buy 4 of them. Even though I'm not planning on using them, now I got 4 of these. I'll just use one of them for this video. The next one is a 300. It's not labeled because I buy these in a big Amazon box. This is the ones I use. This is a 300 MPR filter. I think that stands for Microparticle Performance Ratio. I think that's what it was. I'll put it on the screen. This one is 300. The next one I got is 600, and it just kind of steps up. The next one is 1200, 1500, and the last one is 1900. I couldn't find anything higher than that. And of course, the higher the number, the more it supposedly filters out dust and particles, bacteria and viruses, dander, pollen, etc. And just because I always wanted to try this, this is my last filter. I like to call this 100% filtration. It's just a piece of plywood that's cut out to, the 1625 size. I'll put it in there and see what kind of static pressure drop we get from this one. So these are all the filters I got. I went to 3 different stores to get them, actually. I went to Walmart, Target, and Fleet Farm. And it looks like Filtrette or 3M kind of took over the filter business. All 3 of those stores pretty much just had 3M. There was a couple of Honeywell and other brands, but none of them were my size, so I ended up with pretty much all 3M filters. And I also have 3 examples of dirty pleated filters that we can check as well. This is from a house that is owned by 2 cats and 2 dogs. There's a bunch of hair over it, dust, and whatever else. This one is from a house that was using dark candles, like blue and black and just darker colors. Apparently they can turn filters black like that. And this is what seemingly looks like a clean filter. Here's a new one compared to the used one. And I took this one out of my furnace because my furnace was overheating. So even though it looks nice and white, this was actually pretty plugged up. And I'm kind of curious to measure this with my manometer and see how plugged up this filter really is. But even though it looks clean, this filter was actually pretty plugged up. So I got 3 plugged up filter examples, and then all these clean ones that we can check and see what kind of static pressure drop we get from all these filters. And to do this test, I turned my thermostat off and turned the fan to the on setting. I have my switch turned off now because it's kind of hard to pull out the filter, and as you're pulling it out, you're kind of banging it on the sides, so all the dust is flying in there. So I have the power switch off, so it's not interrupting me while I'm talking, and at the same time, so it's easier to pull that filter in and out. After I put the filter in, the next test subject, I'll turn the switch back on, and then after I'm done testing it, turn it back off, and just kind of go in that order. On, off, put in the next filter, next. And what I'll be using to test these filters is a digital manometer and a static pressure probe kit. That looks like that. And you may have seen this in my other videos. It's just 2 probes with either, I believe it was 5-foot or 6-foot hoses, which sometimes is very useful for checking static pressure on a furnace or an air conditioner. I'll plug them both in. One in one port, one in the other. So my manometer is ready after I untangle this stuff. And I did this off camera, but I also drilled holes. 1 hole before my filter and 1 hole after my filter. And I will be putting my 2 probes, one before the filter and one after the filter, to check how much of an air restriction this filter is creating. Or in technical terms, the static air pressure drop. And then I'll turn on my manometer and make sure it's on the inches of water column scale. INWG. It'll look like that. And we are ready to begin the test. To begin with, I think I will check the filter that I have in there currently. I think it's been in there for about a month now. This is the 300 MPR filter. So let's turn the furnace back on And the fan should come on right away, and see what the static pressure drop is. There it goes. And we're reading 0.38. And that's actually pretty high. That filter is pretty restricted, and that's why I'm hearing all these whistling noises. I don't know if you're hearing that on the camera, but that is a restricted filter. It's only been in there for a month. Even though that filter supposedly lasts up to 3 months, that's usually not the case. So about 0.38 is what we're getting. So let's turn this back off. Pull this bad boy out. As you can see, it doesn't look that dirty, but we can go ahead and check a brand new filter and see what that will be reading. I buy mine on Amazon, just a pack of 6. It's a lot cheaper than buying them in the store. So let's put this new filter in and see what kind of reading we get from this one. Don't forget that the netted side goes towards the furnace, or the arrow is pointing towards the furnace. A lot of times at homeowners' houses, I'll actually take a permanent marker and draw an arrow pointing towards the furnace as a reminder for them, so that they line up their furnace filter arrow with the arrow that I drew. But anyway, let's put that in. My manometer is still in. Turn my furnace back on. So a brand new 300 MPR filter. Let's see what it reads. So right off the bat, a brand new 300 MPR filter, pleated filter, is reading about 0.18, 0.19 inches of water column, which tells us that these pleated filters are actually restrictive to begin with. That's why some technicians will say to only use these fiberglass filters. And the reason for that is because most air conditioners and furnaces are designed to run with a fiberglass filter, not a pleated filter. These tend to be a little too restrictive, especially those premium expensive filters. And next up, I have the fiberglass filter. And before I continue, just briefly, a normal furnace, the static pressure drop across the filter really should be anywhere from 0.1 to 0.3. That's the normal reading that I see. Optimally, of course, the lower is better. On very dirty furnace filters, especially these really high rated ones, either MERV or the MPR, if I see one of these premium grade filters really plugged up, usually the reading I get is like 1.2 or 1.3 inches of water column, which is like severely plugged up. If you run your furnace with a filter like that, it'll overheat in about a minute. And if you're running your air conditioner, the coil that's on top of your furnace will start to freeze up. So those are the premium grade filters. The medium grade pleated filters, where the accordion is more spaced out and the MPR rating is lower, those, when they're pretty dirty, usually they read anywhere from 0.5 to 0.8 is what I see in the field all the time. But I do have a couple of examples of dirty pleated filters, so we'll be able to check that later on. I just wanted to throw that out there just so you know what normal readings are. But anyways, let's proceed. We got the fiberglass filter next. Let's take out the 300 MPR filter, put it aside, put in my fiberglass one. And this one should be the least restrictive filter. So let's see if that rings true. I'm pretty sure it will. I turn my power switch back on. There goes the fan. As expected, 0.07 on a fiberglass filter. This filter is definitely the least restrictive. It allows the most airflow through your furnace. It's very easy on the blower motor. That's why manufacturers design it for fiberglass filters. They are very easy for the furnace. The motor does not get overstrained. Your compressor and the air conditioner does not have to work as hard. But the downside is that this filter tends to let a lot of stuff through. So a lot of the dust and other particles that get through this filter, they end up in your A coil, or the evaporator coil, which is part of the air conditioner, usually sits on top of your furnace. So eventually, with time, that coil will get plugged up and you have to get duct cleaners to come out and clean that up. Or if you get lucky, yours is easily accessible and maybe you can get to it yourself. And that's the biggest reason why I personally use just the cheap pleated filters, the lower MERV rating or the lower MPR rated filters instead of these fiberglass ones, because I don't really feel like having to clean my coil down the road. So that's the fiberglass filter. This is definitely the champion of the least restrictive filters. So let's move on. The next one is 600 MPR. Let's open this guy up. Turn our furnace back on and see what we get for the 600. And we're getting about a 0.23 from the 600. 0.23. So that's as expected for a pleated filter. That's pretty normal. For a cheap or a medium grade pleated filter, usually the reading for a brand new filter will be about 0.2 inches of water column. And let's move on. The next one is double that. It's 1200 MPR. So let's put the next one in. And see what kind of read we get from this one. Surprisingly, this one is actually 0.21, which is less restrictive than the 600 that we just used. So the 1200 is actually less restrictive than the 600. That's pretty impressive. Let's try to put this thing back on and see if that makes a difference. It did not really make a difference. It's still 0.21. So I'll just keep changing the filters out with this thing off because it's not making much of a difference. So that's the 1200. Let's take that out. Let's move on to the next one is 1500. Kind of curious to see if it's going to be lower or higher or the same. My guess would be that it's going to be pretty similar to the 1200. Not very far off. Although the 1200 had the accordion spaced out, whereas starting from the 1500 series, the accordion is closely knit together. As far as I know, this is like 30 feet of paper stacked together like that. So let's put that in and see what kind of reading we get from a 1500. Let's see what we get. So brand new, right when you put it in, it's already reading 0.26. So that one actually starts out pretty restrictive. And this is the one I was talking about, where if it gets really dirty, your static pressure drop will be like 1.2 inches of water column, which will cause your furnace to overheat really fast. So let's turn the power switch off. And next up is the 1900. So going up from 1500 to 1900, that one was 0.25. I'm kind of curious to see if this one is going to be exactly the same or if it will be different. Let's take a look. Wow, that is impressive. It is actually reading 0.18, 0.19, which amazingly is actually the least restrictive out of all the filters we just tried, and this happens to be the highest rated one. That was a little surprising. I thought it was going to be pretty close to the 1500, but amazingly enough, this one was actually the least restrictive. But there is something you should know about that. Just because it might start as the least restrictive, if this filter gets plugged up, it becomes twice as restrictive as a cheap pleated filter. Meaning the static pressure drop on a dirty premium filter is going to be way higher than on a dirty medium grade or a cheap pleated filter. But anyways, let's move on. This one, I'm curious about myself. 100% filtration. I've never actually tried it. I mean, I have a idea of what I'm going to get, but let's try it. Bam. See what kind of a read we get with a piece of plywood in there. That will filter everything. All the dust particles, any kind of debris, anything that comes at it. You can hear my furnace whistling like crazy. As you can see, it's 1.15. So if you think about it, that is crazy. I have a piece of plywood in there, and it's coming out at 1.15. I've seen these premium grade filters, plugged ones, that were reading 1.2, 1.3. So imagine, when these get plugged up, they're actually worse than a piece of plywood in your furnace. And that's why a lot of technicians recommend against them, or against using them. Originally, they're nice, but you have to change them pretty frequently. Otherwise, if they get dirty, that's pretty hard on the motor and just components of the furnace, air conditioner, if it's overheating or if it's freezing in the summer. That's all bad for the unit. Let's see if I can take it back out now. Oh, success. So 100% filtration. If you don't want any dust getting into your house, try using one of these. And the final remaining three are the three dirty examples. We'll start with this one. This one looks like it's white. I mean, I don't know if you can see it on camera. You can actually see that it's covered with a bunch of white particles, whatever it is. Light colored candles, dust, other kind of debris, some kind of powders. And you can see how the filter is kind of sucked in. It's caved in. That's because the furnace blower motor was really sucking on it, straining to get the air through. So let's put that back in. Turn my furnace on and see what kind of a pressure drop we get on that one. You can hear it whistling right away. Oh my goodness. This isn't even a premium grade filter either. So if you remember the piece of plywood we had, that was 1.15. That plugged up pleated filter that is white, it's not even black or gray, is reading almost a 1. It's 0.99. So that's a very, very dirty filter. That explains why my furnace was overheating. In fact, with that particular filter, I kept it. My high limit switch, or the upper limit, was getting stuck open, so it actually wouldn't reset or it wouldn't close back up. So I had to kind of smack on it to get it going. I have a video about that where when I came home and that happened to me, I filmed a video of how I was smacking it and how you can reset that high limit switch. But anyways, this is the filter. Here's a new one, for example, compared to this one. So imagine this one's like a 0.2, and this one that doesn't look much more dirtier is a 0.99. So very, very restrictive, almost like a piece of plywood. So let's move on Number 2 is the pet house. I think I'm going to try to put this in as slow as possible. I don't want all that stuff inside of my furnace. Okay, that's in. Let's turn that on. Well, as you can see, pets are not as restrictive. It's still bad. 0.6 is still pretty restricted. Your furnace or AC will be having problems with a filter like that. So 0.6, if it's starting at 0.2, that means it's 3 times as restrictive as it was to begin with. So 0.6, not as impressive as that white filter, but still pretty dirty. So lesson learned from this one, if you see a filter like this, it's probably going to be around the 0.6 mark. 0.6 inches of water column. And this one's a MERV 3. So it's actually just a basic, cheap, pleated filter. And the last one I got is from a house that was burning dark candles, you know, like navy blue, black, dark colors. And the filter was actually coming out black. Let's see if it's as restrictive as it looks, especially compared to the other 2 dirty ones. Slide that in, turn it on. This is an MPR 300, which by the way is like a trademark of 3M instead of MERV. They use that MPR rating. Furnace whistling like crazy. Dark scented candles. Yikes. So my filter, I think my wife was using light candles, was a 0.99. Dark candles are apparently not as restrictive, but they're very close. Or maybe the guy just replaced his filter faster than I did. So 0.96. That's very restricted. So keep in mind that the piece of plywood was 1.15. And these filters are coming out close to 1. Which means if you have a filter that is that dirty, if it's like a really dark color, that means it's almost equivalent to you just having a piece of plywood in there. I mean, sure, you're getting great filtration, but your unit is really suffering. And that is actually our last test subject. I hope you found this video interesting. I found it pretty interesting myself, actually. If you have any other tips about furnace filters, or maybe I missed something in this video, I know filters tend to be kind of a topic of debate in the HVAC community and homeowners and stuff. What's the best filter, which one to use? I also didn't mention much about the allergy aspect of it. As for allergies, these tend to filter out more of the pollen and stuff in the air. So they do tend to have that effect. Although I've talked to homeowners, lots of them, and asked them, you know, the ones that are using the really expensive filters, do you notice a difference? And there's kind of a split opinion. Some of them say the premium grade filters really do help them. They stop sneezing, they feel a lot better. Other people say, you know, the allergies, they remain the same regardless of which filter they're using. So really, I think it varies from family to family. Some allergies may be affected by filters, whereas others will not. The purpose of this video was not about the health benefits. It was more of how restrictive the filters are and how they affect the furnace or the air conditioner. But if you have any other useful tips or recommendations, do let us know in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching this video. Don't forget to mash that like button on the way out, and we'll see you next time. And for those of you that are still watching, I want to introduce you to a practical prank. I happen to be filming this on April 1st, which is April Fool's Day, so very fitting. I bought this on Amazon just so I can pull pranks on people in the office, just lay this around. I bought a couple of them. This is basically a whiteout bottle with some whiteout poured out. So, you know, you place it somewhere. When somebody is walking by, they start freaking out and try to grab a rag or something to wipe it up. And much to their surprise, when they pick this thing up, the actual whiteout comes with the bottle. So it's kind of fun. I bought this on Amazon, and the first time I seen this, my friend had it at his house, and he actually had a coffee mug that was spilled over with coffee on the table. So, you know, we had a group of people coming over, and I was the first one there. So, of course, I come in the house, and I'm like, oh, man, you spilled coffee. I grab that thing, and I start trying to wipe it up, and, of course, it's fake. So after that, I sat on the couch and I just watched everybody coming in, and every single person was like, "Oh, dude, you spilled coffee," and just every single person, one at a time. I thought that was pretty funny. There's also like Coke bottles that are spilled over and other little pranks like that. So thought I would introduce you to it. If you want to play a little prank on somebody that's very harmless, this thing's great. So go ahead and get yourself one of these and enjoy the panic it creates.